She cheated on our vacation, so I made her pay. The first time I suspected something was wrong, it was nothing more than a whisper at the back of my mind, a fleeting thought I dismissed as paranoia. Our life, from the outside, was the kind others envied. Olivia and I had been married for nearly a decade, and in that time, we had built something that looked unshakable. We had the grand house in an exclusive neighborhood, our two beautiful children, Lily and Ethan, and a social calendar filled with the kind of invitations that only came to those who had truly made it. Olivia thrived in that world, navigating the high society circles with an effortless charm that kept her in constant demand. She was stunning, captivating, always the woman in the room who drew the most attention. And me? I was the steady foundation, the man who made it all possible. I had always prided myself on my ability to provide. My business, a financial consulting firm I had built from the ground up, had given us a life most people only dreamed of. Olivia had never wanted for anything. And in return, I believed, naively, that our relationship was built on something solid. But illusions are fragile things. They shimmer beautifully in the light, concealing the cracks beneath. And once those cracks start to spread, the whole structure collapses. It started with small things. A subtle shift in Olivia's attention. The way her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes when we were alone. She had always been busy, always surrounded by friends, always on the move. But lately, there had been a different quality to it, an urgency. She was more distant, more secretive with her phone, stepping out of the room to take calls, texting late into the night with a smile on her lips. I had asked her about it once, casually, pretending it was just an afterthought. Who keeps you so entertained? She had smiled, that same dazzling, effortless smile that had once convinced me I was the only man in her world. Just the girls, she had said, waving it off as if the idea of anything else was ridiculous. And I had believed her. Or maybe, deep down, I had simply wanted to. Then came the vacation. Olivia had brought it up one evening over dinner, her eyes bright with excitement. We should get away, she had said, setting down her wine glass with a soft clink. Just us. Somewhere beautiful. Somewhere far away from all the noise. It was exactly what I wanted to hear. We had been growing distant, and I had convinced myself that this was the solution. A trip would give us time to reconnect, to push aside whatever had been gnawing at the edges of our marriage. I'll handle everything, she promised. Just say yes. And so I did. The departure day arrived sooner than I expected. Olivia was radiant that morning, moving through the house with an almost electric energy. She hummed softly as she packed, her fingers skimming over silk dresses and designer swimsuits with the familiarity of someone who belonged in luxury. As I watched her, a small, inexplicable feeling of unease crept into my chest. It wasn't anything she had said or done. If anything, she seemed happier than she had in weeks. But something felt off. I shook it off, blaming my exhaustion. Between managing my company and being a husband and father, I had barely had time to breathe. Maybe I was just reading too much into things. At the airport, Olivia was on her phone again, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. She was smiling, laughing softly at something. I told myself it was just one of her friends, one of the countless people who were always vying for her attention. I told myself not to let it bother me. But when she turned the screen slightly, angling it away so I wouldn't see, I felt that whisper of doubt grow louder. And for the first time, I found myself wondering, really wondering, what it was that Olivia wasn't telling me. The drive to the airport was quiet, almost too quiet. Olivia, usually animated and chatty, sat beside me, scrolling through her phone with a faint, unreadable smile. I kept glancing at her from the corner of my eye, waiting for the usual playful banter about how I always forgot something when we traveled. But today, nothing. Just the soft clicks of her nails tapping against the screen. I cleared my throat. You excited? She looked up, blinking as if she had forgotten I was there. Oh, of course, babe. It's going to be amazing. Just what we need. I nodded, but something about the way she said it nagged at me. It wasn't what we needed, It was what she wanted. I let the thought slip away, convincing myself I was just overanalyzing. At the airport, Olivia took the lead. She always did. She was the planner, the organizer, the one who made sure everything ran smoothly. I found comfort in that, in the way she handled the details. It allowed me to focus on my work, my company, the things that built our life together. But today, that comfort was laced with something else, a whisper of doubt. She handed the passports to the agent with a bright, effortless smile. "Honeymoon suite, please," she added playfully. The agent chuckled, glancing at me. "First time in paradise?" I smirked, nodding. "Something like that." As we made our way through security, Olivia's phone buzzed in her hand. A message flashed across the screen, gone in an instant, but I caught it. "See you soon. Can't wait." I frowned, my mind catching on that tiny thread of unease. "Who's that?" I asked casually. Olivia's fingers locked around her phone as she slipped it into her bag. "Oh, just Clara," she said with a wave of her hand. "She's excited about her trip next month." I didn't respond, but the feeling didn't leave. It clung to me like a stain I couldn't scrub out. The flight, a distance that wasn't just miles. As we boarded the plane, Olivia slipped in her seat by the window, her movements smooth and effortless. I took my seat beside her, stretching my legs as the engines hummed to life. She pulled out her phone again. Another text, another fleeting smile. I felt the weight of it now, heavy in my gut. I reached for her hand. "Hey," I said softly, my thumb brushing over her knuckles. "No phones on vacation, remember?" She laughed, a little too brightly, and locked the screen. Right. You got me." But the moment passed, and so did her attention. She turned toward the window, gazing out at the clouds as if lost in thought. I watched her, wondering when the space between us had grown so vast. The Olivia I had fallen in love with used to be so present, so full of life, of curiosity. Now, she was slipping through my fingers and I didn't know why. Or maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. Arrival, beauty tainted by doubt. The resort was breathtaking. White sand stretched for miles, kissed by the turquoise waves. Palm trees swayed lazily in the breeze, and the air smelled of salt and coconut. Olivia inhaled deeply, spinning around with her arms outstretched. God, isn't this perfect? I should have felt the same thrill, the same excitement. But my chest felt tight. As we stepped up to the check-in counter, Olivia slid her sunglasses to the top of her head and leaned in with that effortless charm of hers. "Reservation for Sterling." The receptionist smiled. "Ah, yes. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. You'll be in the honeymoon villa." "Honeymoon?" I chuckled, glancing at Olivia. Didn't realize we were newlyweds again. She winked. Just thought it'd be fun. The receptionist handed over the key, but something in her expression shifted as she glanced at the system. "Oh, it seems the additional rooms are already set up as well." I blinked. "Additional rooms?" The receptionist hesitated, glancing between us. "Yes, the 3 additional rooms booked under Mr. Sterling's account." My stomach turned to ice. Slowly, I looked at Olivia. I thought this was our trip. She waved a dismissive hand, laughing lightly. "Oh, don't be dramatic. It is our trip." But Clara and the girls decided to come last minute. I figured you wouldn't mind. The more the merrier, right? My jaw tightened. My name was on those rooms. My money had paid for them, and Olivia hadn't even thought to mention it. I exhaled slowly, forcing a smile. Right, the more, the merrier. But inside, I knew this wasn't our trip at all, and Olivia wasn't the woman I thought she was. The moment we stepped into the grand lobby of the resort, I felt a twinge of unease that had nothing to do with the long flight. The high marble ceilings stretched above us, glittering chandeliers reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. Bellboys in crisp uniforms bustled around, carrying expensive luggage to even more expensive suites. Olivia inhaled deeply, a contented smile playing on her lips. I turned to her, reaching for her hand. "It really is beautiful," I said, squeezing her fingers. She barely responded, her attention flickering toward something or someone, behind me. Her hand slipped from mine so effortlessly it almost felt intentional. Then I heard it. A chorus of excited voices, high-pitched and dripping with exaggerated enthusiasm. Oh my God, look who it is. Before I could even process what was happening, three women strutted toward us, as if the hotel lobby were a catwalk designed just for them. They were all impeccably dressed, oversized designer sunglasses, manicured nails tapping against expensive phones, expensive handbags slung effortlessly over their arms. Clara, Fiona, Melissa, Olivia's closest friends. My stomach clenched. I turned to Olivia, frowning. What's going on? She beamed up at me, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Surprise, she said, throwing her arms around my neck as if this were some wonderful romantic gesture. Surprise? I took a slow, measured breath, trying to suppress the irritation bubbling inside me. I had expected a week alone with my wife, a chance to reconnect, to step away from our busy lives and just be together. But here were her three best friends, greeting us like they were just as much a part of this vacation as I was. Clara, the self-proclaimed leader of their little clique, stepped forward, her lips curling into a smirk. David, you lucky man. You get to spend a whole week with four gorgeous women. How do you feel about that? Like I just got punched in the gut. I forced a polite smile. I wasn't aware we were having company. Fiona, the youngest and most flirtatious of the group, pouted playfully. Olivia wanted it to be a surprise. Isn't she the best? I turned to my wife, waiting for an explanation. She simply shrugged, as if this was no big deal. David, come on. I thought it would be fun. We always vacation alone. We needed a change, don't you think? A change? A deep, slow-burning anger started to coil in my chest. This wasn't a last-minute decision. No, this had been planned. Olivia had arranged this entire trip, knowing full well that I was expecting a romantic getaway. And yet, she hadn't mentioned a single word about it. I glanced at the three women, who were now giggling amongst themselves, already pulling Olivia into their own little world. The trip had barely begun, and I could already see where I stood. I was an afterthought. The realization hit me like a slap. For years, Olivia had been slowly pulling away from me, always claiming she was too busy, too exhausted, too distracted to focus on us. I had brushed it off, chalking it up to stress, to work, to life. But now I saw the truth. I wasn't her priority. I was her obligation. Come on, let's check in. Olivia chirped, completely oblivious to my growing resentment. As the women walked ahead, I followed in silence, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Something wasn't right, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. The cool air inside the resort lobby was a welcome contrast to the humid sea breeze outside, but I barely noticed. My mind buzzed with unease, a growing itch at the back of my skull that refused to be ignored. The soft murmur of vacationers checking in, the faint scent of citrus and sandalwood drifting from the polished marble counter. All of it faded into the background as the receptionist slid a stack of key cards toward me. "Here are your 4 rooms, sir," she said with a polite smile. I blinked. 4? There had to be a mistake. I hadn't booked 4 rooms. Hell, I hadn't even been aware that we were sharing this trip with others until Olivia had so casually mentioned it in passing. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "I only authorized 1 room. Can you check that again?" The receptionist gave me a practiced nod, fingers gliding over the keyboard as she pulled up the reservation details. After a brief pause, she turned the screen slightly in my direction. "The reservation was made under your name," she confirmed. 4 rooms, all charged to your account." A slow, simmering anger curled in my chest. My jaw tightened. My name, my account, without my consent. I turned to Olivia, who had been standing a few feet away, chatting idly with Clara and the others. She must have sensed the shift in my demeanor because she glanced over, flashing me a breezy smile. "Everything okay?" she asked, completely unfazed. I gestured to the key cards. 4 rooms, Olivia? My voice was level, but there was an edge to it. All my name? She sighed, as if I was making a fuss over nothing. David, it's fine. It was just easier this way. Besides, you're always saying how we should enjoy life more, right? This is me, enjoying life. Her tone was light, but there was something smug underneath it, a challenge disguised as nonchalance. You didn't think to ask me first? I pressed, my patience thinning. She rolled her eyes. Come on, David. What's the big deal? You can afford it. It's not like it's going to break the bank. I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of remorse, of recognition that she had crossed a line. But all I saw was entitlement, a quiet arrogance in the way she dismissed my concern as trivial. I exhaled slowly. There was no point in making a scene. Not here. Not now. I took the key cards without another word, stuffing them into my pocket. Olivia, apparently satisfied with my silence, turned back to her friends, seamlessly picking up the conversation where she had left off. The ease with which she dismissed me was staggering. I watched her laugh at something Clara said, her posture relaxed, her expression glowing with excitement. And in that moment, it became painfully clear this wasn't our vacation. It never had been. This was Olivia's escape, her playground, and I was just the fool footing the bill. A slow, bitter realization settled in my chest. I wasn't angry about the money. Not really. I had more than enough to cover this trip 10 times over. But this wasn't about finances. It was about respect, about trust, about the fundamental understanding that marriage wasn't supposed to be a game of manipulation and deceit. And yet, Olivia had played her hand as if I were nothing more than a background character in her perfectly curated life. I had spent years building something solid with this woman, believing that our foundation was unshakable. But now, standing in this overpriced resort, watching her revel in a world I apparently had no part in, I felt something shift inside me. A door, once locked, creaked open. I wasn't just seeing Olivia, I was really seeing her. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I liked what I saw. The golden hues of the setting sun stretched lazily over the pristine ocean, casting a warm, deceptive glow over the resort. From the outside, everything looked perfect, the kind of paradise Olivia had always craved. But beneath the luxury, beneath the picturesque perfection, I felt something gnawing at the edges of my mind. A quiet, insidious thought that wouldn't leave me alone. I walked through the resort's lobby, my hands shoved into my pockets, trying to make sense of the situation. A vacation for two had turned into a social event for Olivia and her entourage. My presence felt more like an afterthought, a mere accessory to the grandeur she had so carefully constructed. But what disturbed me even more was the sense that this wasn't just a last-minute surprise. This had been planned. I approached the front desk, forcing my voice to remain calm. Hi, I just wanted to confirm something about our reservation. The receptionist, a young woman with a polite smile, typed into the computer. Of course, sir. What would you like to know? Our room, I said. I just want to make sure everything's in order. She nodded, scanning the screen. Yes, you have the Ocean View suite, and the other rooms are registered under your name as well. A slow, creeping chill worked its way up my spine. I frowned. Other rooms. The receptionist looked up, slightly hesitant now. Yes, sir, for additional rooms, all booked under your account. For a moment, I said nothing. I simply stood there, staring at her, waiting for her to correct herself, waiting for her to tell me that she'd made a mistake. But she didn't. The numbers were right there, glaring at me in black and white. The total charges had already been authorized on my credit card. I clenched my jaw, inhaling deeply through my nose. Olivia had invited her friends, not just as guests, but as fully accommodated, all expenses paid guests, and I had unknowingly funded the entire thing. I forced a tight smile, nodding at the receptionist. Thanks for confirming. My voice came out even controlled. Years of negotiating high-stakes deals had trained me well. I knew how to keep my composure, even when I wanted to snap. As I turned away, my mind raced. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't Olivia forgetting to mention a small detail. This was deliberate. I had to find her. The poolside gathering. The sound of clinking glasses and laughter drifted through the evening air, leading me toward the poolside bar. A group of women lounged under the soft glow of string lights, their voices rising and falling in an effortless symphony of privilege. And there she was, Olivia. She sat with her back to me, her dark hair cascading over one shoulder as she gestured animatedly, a cocktail in one hand. The women surrounding her, Clara, Fiona, and Melissa, laughed at something she had said. I watched her for a moment, studied her. She was completely at ease, not a trace of guilt or hesitation in her posture. She wasn't nervously checking her phone, wasn't scanning the crowd for me. No, Olivia was in her element, basking in the attention of her friends, indulging in the high life she had so carefully curated. And I was the fool who had paid for it. I stepped forward, my presence finally registering in Olivia's periphery. She turned, and for the briefest second, I saw it, a flicker of something in her eyes. Surprise? Annoyance? It was gone too quickly for me to tell. David, she said smoothly, tilting her head in faux curiosity. What's wrong? I glanced at the table, my gaze sweeping over the half-finished cocktails, the designer shopping bags tucked neatly beneath their chairs. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her squirm before speaking. I had an interesting conversation with the receptionist just now. My voice was measured, calm. Olivia's expression didn't falter. Oh, they mentioned something about 4 additional rooms. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. All under my name. Clara shifted in her seat, suddenly interested in stirring her drink. Fiona glanced away, and Melissa let out a nervous laugh. They knew. Of course they knew. Olivia, however, merely sighed, as if I had just brought up something terribly tedious. David, don't be dramatic. She set down her drink, crossing her legs with deliberate ease. It was just easier to book everything under one name. I let out a slow breath through my nose, keeping my expression unreadable. Easier for who? For all of us. She gave me that practice smile, the one she used at fundraisers and dinner parties. I didn't think you'd mind. I studied her carefully, the dismissiveness in her tone, the way she had immediately downplayed the situation. It wasn't just arrogance. It was entitlement. Olivia truly believed I wouldn't care. Or worse, she believed I wouldn't do anything about it. I smiled then, a slow, deliberate expression. Interesting. Olivia's brows furrowed slightly. What? I shook my head, stepping back. Nothing, I said, voice smooth. I just needed to hear you say it. Then I turned and walked away. Not because I was done, but because the game had just begun. The night was warm, the air thick with the scent of sea salt and expensive perfume. Laughter spilled from the resort's lavish lounge, where Olivia and her friends sipped their overpriced cocktails, basking in the glow of wealth and indulgence. I sat at the edge of the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey, watching them. Olivia was in her element, carefree, radiant, oblivious to my presence. Or maybe she wasn't oblivious at all. Maybe she simply didn't care. It was a strange feeling, being invisible to the woman I had devoted my life to. As the hours stretched on, my patience wore thin. The conversation at the table had long since shifted away from anything of substance, just mindless chatter about designer brands, luxury vacations, and the social scene back home. I had tried, in the beginning, to engage, to remind Olivia that I was still here, still a part of this so-called getaway. But every time I opened my mouth, she waved me off with a distracted smile, a quick, "Oh, David, don't be so serious." I wasn't serious. I was suffocating. I stood, slipping away from the crowd unnoticed, making my way back to our suite. It was late, but I still held on to the foolish hope that Olivia would come back soon and we'd have a real conversation. Maybe I'd been overthinking. Maybe this was just her way of unwinding. Maybe. The sound of the door opening behind me shattered my thoughts. Olivia stepped inside, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She barely glanced at me as she walked toward the mirror, adjusting her diamond earrings. The air between us was thick, charged with something unspoken. I turned to face her. "Long night," she hummed in response, her fingers fixing an imaginary flaw in her perfectly styled hair. MMM. The girls wanted to stay longer, but I figure I should at least check in. Check in, like I was a guest in her world. I leaned against the dresser, arms crossed. "Olivia, can we talk?" She sighed, turning to me with an expression that was equal parts impatience and boredom. "David, please, don't start." "Start what?" My voice was eerily calm, but inside, something dangerous was unraveling. "I just want to understand what's happening here. I thought this trip was for us." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. Did you really think we were just going to sit here, staring into each other's eyes all day? God, David, we're not newlyweds. It's just a vacation." Something in me cracked. "A vacation that I paid for," I said, my voice a shade colder now. She scoffed, a condescending smile playing at her lips. "Oh, here we go. Is this about money? Because if it is, I really don't have the energy for this conversation right now." I let out a breath, forcing myself to stay composed. "It's not just about the money, Olivia. It's about the fact that you planned this entire trip without me. You brought your friends, booked extra rooms, and I had to find out from the front desk. Do you have any idea how that feels?" She had the audacity to laugh. "David, don't be dramatic." I stepped closer, my eyes locking onto hers. "Dramatic? You didn't even book our room together, Olivia. What the hell is that about?" She hesitated just for a second. A flicker of something crossed her face. Guilt? Maybe? Annoyance? It was gone before I could decipher it. "I'm staying with Clara tonight," she said breezily, as if she were informing me about a lunch date. "It's been forever since we've had girl time." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. She wasn't even trying to make excuses anymore. "Are you serious?" My voice was quiet, deadly. "Oh, don't look at me like that," she said, finally meeting my gaze. "It's just one night. What difference does it make?" The difference was everything. But I didn't explode. I didn't demand an explanation or beg her to stay. Instead, I smiled. A slow, knowing smile that made her shift slightly, as if she'd suddenly realized she had miscalculated something. "You're right," I said smoothly. "One night doesn't make a difference." Her eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious. "Exactly." I stepped back, giving her space. "You should go then. Enjoy your time with Clara." She tilted her head, studying me, as if trying to decipher my sudden change in demeanor. But I gave her nothing. No anger, no pleading. Just an easy, almost amused expression. "Good night, Olivia." She hesitated, but only for a moment. Then, with a shrug, she grabbed her purse and walked out, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive perfume and something far more bitter, disdain. The moment the door clicked shut, my hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just a vacation gone wrong. This wasn't just neglect. This was something deeper, something colder. This was the beginning of the end. And Olivia had no idea just how much things were about to change. The morning sunlight seeped through the cracks of the resort's expensive curtains, casting golden streaks across the pristine white sheets of the bed I had slept in alone. Olivia had never come back last night. I hadn't expected her to. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of waves crashing against the shore in the distance. The resort was awake now. Housekeepers knocking on doors, guests chattering as they made their way to breakfast, and the distant hum of laughter from the poolside bar. Life went on as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and sat there, feeling the weight of clarity settle over me. A strange sense of calm filled my chest. Not the numbness of denial, nor the burning rage of betrayal. Just cold, calculated understanding. Olivia had already left me. Not physically, not legally, but emotionally. And now it was my turn. The last straw. I reached for my phone and scrolled through the messages from the past few days. Olivia had sent me exactly one text late last night. Staying with Clara. Don't wait up. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No acknowledgement of how wrong this all was. I clenched my jaw, resisting the urge to throw the phone against the wall. But what was the point? I wasn't going to waste another ounce of energy being angry at a woman who had stopped considering me long ago. Instead, I got up, packed my suitcase, and dialed the front desk. "Good morning, Mr. Calloway." The receptionist greeted me. "How can I assist you?" "I'd like to check out," I said, my voice steady. A pause. "Oh, are you sure? Your stay was booked for the whole week." "I'm sure." I could almost hear the confusion in her voice as she processed my request, but I didn't care. Let Olivia wake up in her fantasy world, thinking everything was still under her control. Let her walk into the breakfast hall with her designer dress and practice smile, oblivious to the fact that at this very moment I was slipping out of her life. "Will Mrs. Calloway be checking out as well?" the receptionist asked hesitantly. "No," I said, exhaling slowly. "Just me." The moment of realization. By the time I reached the lobby, my suitcase in hand, I saw Olivia at the other end of the resort's open-air terrace. She was sitting at a table with Clara, sipping her morning mimosa, laughing as if the world belonged to her. She didn't see me. Good. I watched her for a moment, memorizing this version of her, the version that believed she had one, the version that thought I would always be there, waiting in the background, funding her lavish getaways while she paraded around with her friends, acting as if she were untouchable. Then I turned away and walked to the front desk. The final step, as I handed over my key, I couldn't help but smirk at the absurdity of it all. Olivia thought she was the one in control. She thought she was the mastermind, the puppeteer pulling the strings. She had no idea that the game had already changed. Because this wasn't just me leaving a resort early. This was me leaving her. The drive home from the resort was eerily quiet. No music, no calls, no distractions, just the hum of the engine and the rhythmic beat of my own pulse in my ears. My grip on the steering wheel was firm but steady. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was cold, calculated. I had spent years living under the illusion of love, a mirage so perfectly crafted that even I had believed it. But illusions shatter, and when they do, they don't just break, they slice. And Olivia had cut me deep. But wounds heal, and I was going to make sure that when I healed, I'd be stronger than ever. She, on the other hand, was about to learn what it felt like to have everything stripped away, just like she had done to me. Step 1. Cutting off the flow. I pulled into my driveway, letting the engine idle for a few moments as I mentally mapped out my next moves. Olivia had built a lifestyle of luxury on my hard work, and she had never once stopped to think about the source of her endless indulgences. Well, that was about to change. I stepped inside my house, my house. That distinction had never felt more important. I poured myself a drink, the amber liquid swirling in the glass as I took a slow sip, savoring the quiet power in that moment. Then I got to work. The first call was to the credit card company. Yes, I'd like to report a compromise card. The representative ran through the usual script, asking about fraudulent charges if I'd lost my wallet. I played along, nodding as I listened, though they couldn't see me. "No, I just need to cancel every card linked to this account. Effective immediately." The woman on the other end hesitated. "All of them, sir?" "Yes." A few keystrokes later, it was done. Olivia's lifeline cut. The next time she tried to swipe for a 5-star dinner, her card would decline. I could picture it now. The confused frown, the forced smile as she tried another, the quiet panic settling in as one by one, every avenue of access closed in on her. Good. Step 2. Locking the vault. Next, I logged into our joint bank accounts. A foolish move on my part to ever have shared one, but that was in the past. I initiated a freeze on the accounts, preventing any withdrawals without my approval. Then, I transferred my own assets into a separate account, one Olivia had no knowledge of, ensuring that my hard-earned money remained mine and mine alone. The numbers blinked back at me from the screen. Years of work, discipline, and careful financial planning. And she had treated it like an infinite well, never stopping to think that one day the well might run dry. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. The next call would be the hardest, but also the most important. Step 3. Securing the future. My lawyer, Jonathan, had always been a no-nonsense type. A man who didn't just play the game, he knew the game. When I explained the situation, he didn't waste time with sympathy. "She won't see it coming," he said matter-of-factly. No, I agreed. She won't. We discussed the details of the divorce filing, ensuring that Olivia would be entitled to as little as legally possible. We had a prenup, one she had insisted on tweaking to her benefit before we married, but what she hadn't counted on was that I had protected myself in ways she never understood. I had always been careful, always one step ahead, even when I was blind to her betrayal. "File as soon as possible," I told him. "Understood." With that, the final piece was emotion. The inevitable reckoning. By the time I shut my laptop, a strange sense of peace settled over me. I wasn't sad. I wasn't bitter. I was simply done. Olivia had built her empire on my foundation, mistaking my patience for weakness. She had assumed I'd always be there, always be the provider, the safety net. She was about to learn what it meant to stand on her own. I poured myself another drink, swirling the liquid slowly before taking a measured sip. Somewhere at that very moment, Olivia was probably ordering champagne, laughing with her friends, basking in her own arrogance. And somewhere, very soon, she would reach for her card, confident as ever, only to realize the world she had built was crumbling beneath her feet. And I would be just fine. The house was silent, an unfamiliar kind of silence, the kind that settles deep into the bones, no longer strained by tension or false pretenses. I stood in the middle of my living room, feeling the emptiness press against my skin. The sun cast long streaks of gold across the hardwood floors, painting everything in a deceptive warmth. It had been 3 days since I'd left Olivia at the resort. 3 days since I'd quietly walked away, leaving her to bask in the fantasy she had so carefully curated. 3 days since I had reclaimed my life from a woman who had mistaken my patience for weakness. And still, she hadn't called. Not a single text. No voicemail filled with feigned concern, no half-hearted attempt to explain herself. It was almost laughable. A part of me had expected an immediate outburst. Rage, desperation, some kind of reckoning. But there was nothing. The only evidence of her existence came in the form of bank notifications. A declining charge at a high-end spa. A failed transaction at a designer boutique. Another attempt at a 5-star restaurant. One by one, Olivia's little luxuries were slipping through her fingers, and she had yet to realize the full scope of what was happening. I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders as I leaned back against the couch. The tension that had lived there for years had disappeared, as if my very muscles had been shackled by our marriage. Now, there was only stillness. I took a sip of my whiskey, neat, no ice the way I liked it. The burn in my throat was a welcome sensation, a contrast to the numbing detachment I had grown accustomed to. I had spent the last 72 hours securing my finances, ensuring Olivia's grasp on my wealth was permanently severed. The bank accounts were locked. The credit cards were canceled. The legal team was already working through the paperwork for the divorce, and my name was being disentangled from every financial thread she had woven herself into. She would soon find herself standing in the wreckage of the life she had so carelessly built, alone. A bitter smile tugged at the corner of my lips. She thought I was just a wallet. She forgot I was the architect. I had built this life, every brick and beam of it. She had merely decorated it with illusions, expensive dresses, glittering parties, and whispered betrayals. And now I was tearing it all down. A vibration against the coffee table broke the silence. My phone, its screen flashing with an incoming call. Not Olivia. Brian. The audacity nearly made me laugh. I let it ring, watching his name flicker like a dying ember. When the call ended, a voicemail notification appeared. Curious, I press play. David, man, listen. I know you're pissed, but you don't understand, all right? It's complicated. Olivia, she's not who you think she is. We need to talk. I scoffed, shaking my head as I deleted the message. Not who I think she is. I knew exactly who Olivia was. And soon, she would know exactly who I was, too. The quiet before the storm was ending. It was time to let it break. The morning passed in a quiet hum of productivity. I sat in my home office, the crisp scent of freshly brewed coffee curling through the air as I reviewed a set of investment reports. It was remarkable how quickly life had recalibrated itself once I had severed Olivia's influence from it. There was clarity now, an absence of the ever-present noise that had once filled the spaces between us. The silence wasn't lonely, it was liberating. Then, just as I was about to close my laptop, my phone vibrated against the wooden desk. Not a call, not a message, just a simple notification from my banking app. A transaction attempt. Declined. Olivia Marcus, $2,480. Luxury boutique, Miami Beach. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile tugging at the corners of my lips. So, she had finally noticed. The image of Olivia at some high-end store played in my mind. Her manicured fingers draped in gold and diamonds, reaching for a designer handbag, her voice dripping with the sweet confidence of someone who had never once been told no. She probably hadn't even looked at the price tag. Why would she? Money had never been a concern for her. But today, for the first time, it was. I could almost see it. The moment the cashier swiped the card, the polite yet robotic smile as she handed it back. I'm sorry, ma'am, but this card has been declined. Olivia's reaction would be instant. Mild confusion at first, then a dismissive laugh. That's impossible, she'd say, fishing through her designer bag for another card. Another swipe. Another decline. The first flicker of irritation would cross her face. By the third failed attempt, I imagined her lips would tighten into a thin line, her composure cracking just enough for the sales assistant to notice. For the first time in years, Olivia wasn't in control. I took another sip of coffee, enjoying the quiet victory. It didn't stop there. One after another, notifications flooded my screen. Declined. Olivia Marcus, $620. High-end spa, Miami Beach. Declined. Olivia Marcus, $150. Gourmet restaurant, Miami Beach. Declined. Olivia Marcus, $890. Designer shoes, Miami Beach. Each one painted a clearer picture. Olivia's blissful vacation, the one she had carefully orchestrated at my expense, was unraveling before her eyes. And I hadn't even lifted a finger. The buzzing of my phone broke through my thoughts again. But this time, it wasn't a transaction alert. It was Olivia. Her name flashed across the screen, a familiar sight once associated with warmth and companionship. Now, it was just a string of letters devoid of any real meaning. I let it ring. Seconds later, another call, then another. The persistence was almost amusing. I pictured her, pacing in her hotel suite, frustration mounting with every unanswered ring. I knew exactly what she wanted, to demand an explanation, to act as if this were some kind of clerical error. But there was no error. This was intentional. After the fourth missed call, a message appeared. Olivia, call me back. This is urgent. I exhaled slowly, debating whether to reply. But I wasn't in a rush. I wasn't the one desperate for answers. I simply locked my phone and set it down. Olivia could wait. She had made me wait for years. Wait for honesty, wait for loyalty, wait for the respect that I had freely given her, but had never been returned in kind. And now, she was the one waiting. The first notification came through at exactly 3:17 p.m. I was in my office, casually reviewing a business proposal when my phone buzzed beside me. A glance at the screen revealed a familiar message from my bank. Declined transaction, $482.75, Ocean View Resort and Spa. A slow smile curled at the corner of my lips. I could picture the scene unfolding in real time. Olivia, draped in one of her designer sundresses, strutting into the spa with the confidence of a queen. Her perfectly manicured fingers handing over the black credit card she had grown so accustomed to using without a second thought. And then denied. The receptionist, probably young and polite, would glance up, momentarily confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your card has been declined." Olivia, ever the picture of poise, would blink once, twice, then let out a small, indulgent chuckle. "Oh, that's odd. Try it again." Another beep. Another decline. Perhaps a flicker of irritation would cross her face now, but she would cover it with a gracious smile. How embarrassing. Let me just... She'd pull out her phone, open her banking app, and that's when it would hit her. The accounts were frozen. The money was gone. The lifeline she had always relied upon had been cut without warning. And I, miles away, leaned back in my chair and exhaled a quiet breath of satisfaction. I didn't stop working. I let my phone rest on the desk, waiting, because I knew this was only the beginning. 3:42 p.m. Declined transaction. $1,200. Boutique Levante. Shopping. So she wasn't panicking yet. She was still under the illusion that this was some sort of mistake. She had likely left the spa unfazed, strolled down the cobblestone streets of the resort village, and entered one of her favorite luxury boutiques. Perhaps she was trying to buy another handbag or some silk dress she didn't need. Whatever it was, the boutique clerk had just handed her the receipt to sign when another beep, another rejection. Her world was beginning to crack. 4:15 p.m. Declined transaction. $215.89. La Riviera Fine Dining. Dinner plans disrupted. Now she was scrambling. By now, her attempt to transfer funds from our joint accounts had failed. The bank had likely notified her of the restrictions. Every number she dialed, every attempt to access the money she had taken for granted, led to the same dead end. I imagined her sitting at the candlelit table, fidgeting with the stem of a wine glass, forcing a laugh as she told the waiter there must be some issue with the bank. Brian, if he was with her, would probably be trying to salvage the moment. He was always eager to impress, always desperate to prove he was enough for her. Maybe he was offering to cover the bill, pretending to be the hero, unaware that Olivia's entire financial foundation had just crumbled beneath her feet. 5:30 p.m. Incoming call, Olivia. I watched the phone ring. And ring. And ring. I didn't answer. She tried again at 5:33 p.m. Then 5:35. Then 5:41. I let every call go unanswered. By 6 p.m., she had resorted to text messages. Olivia, David, call me. There's something wrong with the bank. Olivia, David, seriously, everything is locked. I need you to fix this. Olivia, David, I know you're getting these. Answer me. And then the inevitable shift in tone. Olivia, you had no right to do this. You're being ridiculous. There it was. Not panic, not regret, but entitlement. She truly believed she could waltz through life, making her choices with no consequences. She thought she could treat me like an afterthought, a wallet, a fool, and that I would simply keep playing along. But tonight, she was learning the truth. Tonight, Olivia Marshall was experiencing what it felt like to have everything slip through her fingers. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't feel like the one left in the dark. I felt like the one holding the power. The first call came at 9:07 a.m. I let it ring. It was Olivia, of course. The name flashed on my screen, bright and insistent, demanding my attention like she always had. I leaned back in my chair, letting the vibration hum through the room before it finally stopped. A few seconds later, a voicemail notification popped up, but I didn't bother listening. I already knew what she'd say. She had finally realized something was wrong. I had imagined this moment for days. Olivia standing at some high-end boutique counter, smiling at the cashier as she handed over one of my cards, expecting a smooth transaction. and then declined. At first, she would think it was a mistake. Maybe the cashier had entered the number wrong. Maybe there was a bank error. So she'd try again. Declined. Then the confusion would settle in, a tiny frown creasing her perfect forehead. She'd step aside, phone in hand, dialing me in that same patronizing tone she used whenever she thought I had messed up something. The tone that told me she still saw me as the predictable, controllable husband. But I wasn't that man anymore. At 9:15, she called again. This time I picked up. David. Her voice came sharp, urgent. Not the usual slow, syrupy sweetness she used when she wanted something. Something's wrong with my card. It got declined. I think there's a fraud alert. Can you check with the bank? I leaned back, savoring the moment. No fraud alert, I said evenly. A pause. The kind where you could hear someone's entire world tilting on its axis. What do you mean? She asked, her voice a touch sharper. I canceled the cards, I said simply. The ones in my name, at least. Silence. Then a brittle laugh. David, don't be ridiculous. Just call the bank and fix it. No, I said, enjoying the unfamiliar weight of that word. How many times had I bent to her whims? Adjusted my schedule, rearranged my finances, played the role of the accommodating husband while she played socialite? Not anymore. Her tone shifted, losing its sharp edges, smoothing over into something softer. Baby, she cooed, I know you're upset about the trip. I should have communicated better, but let's not overreact. I almost laughed. Overreact? She really thought I would fall for it. The way she had always managed to twist things, to make me feel unreasonable for questioning her selfishness. But the game was over. I've already spoken to my lawyer. I continued, my voice calm, controlled. The divorce papers will be filed soon. My accounts are locked. You'll have to use your own money from now on. A sharp intake of breath. Then, the real Olivia emerged. The one beneath the charm, the soft laughter, the carefully curated grace. You can't just cut me off, she hissed. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I just did. For years, Olivia had lived in a world where she held all the power, a world built on my money, my stability, my unwavering support. But now, that world was crumbling, and she was standing in the ruins, stunned that I had dared to pull the rug out from under her. Her breathing turned uneven, and for a moment, I wondered if she was crying. Then I realized, no, Olivia wasn't the type to cry over love lost. She was crying over lost control, over the realization that she wasn't untouchable. Her next words came in a whisper, low and venomous. You'll regret this, David. I leaned forward, gripping the phone tighter, my voice steady. No, Olivia, I regret ever trusting you in the first place. And with that, I hung up. The moment the call ended, I felt it, relief. Not just a surface-level satisfaction, but something deeper. A weight I hadn't even realized I had been carrying for years had been lifted. Outside my office window, the city moved on, indifferent to the war that had just ended in my world. And for the first time in a long time, I was free. The cursor blinked on the screen, an unspoken challenge, as the divorce papers stared back at me. I read over every line, each word solidifying the reality I had finally accepted. Olivia and I were finished. Not in the heated, impulsive way some marriages ended, but in the slow, methodical destruction that left no room for redemption. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling as I ran a hand through my hair. The weight of the past few weeks had been relentless, yet something in me felt lighter, freer. Olivia's betrayal had stripped away the illusion I had built around our marriage, and in its place, clarity had settled like dust in an abandoned house. The office was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the city lights beyond the glass window. The skyline stretched out before me, a living, breathing reminder of the empire I had built, one that Olivia had taken for granted. She had played her hand recklessly, assuming I would always be there, always be the fool willing to fund her lifestyle, to turn a blind eye to her deception. She had forgotten who I was. I picked up my glass of whiskey, the ice clinking softly as I took a slow sip, letting the warmth burn down my throat. The irony wasn't lost on me. Olivia had spent years perfecting the role of the devoted wife, wearing her love like an accessory, something she could flaunt when it suited her and discard when it didn't. But now, stripped of my resources, my influence, my protection, she was nothing more than a woman grasping at the remnants of a life she had thrown away. My phone vibrated on the desk, the screen flashing her name. Olivia. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She had been calling incessantly for days, her texts shifting from casual inquiries to frantic messages filled with thinly veiled desperation. At first, it was subtle. Hey, David, can we talk? Call me when you get a second. Then, when I ignored her, what's going on? Why are my cards declining? Did you change the bank access? And finally, when she realized I had pulled the rug out from under her. David, you're being ridiculous. We need to sort this out. You can't just cut me off like this. We have a life together. Answer me. I smirked at the last one. She was unraveling. I had spent years watching Olivia control every aspect of our lives, meticulously curating her image, ensuring she was seen in the right places with the right people. But none of that mattered now. Without my name, without my resources, without the security I had provided, she was adrift. And she knew it. I turned back to the laptop, my fingers hovering over the trackpad before clicking send. The email shot off into the abyss, carrying with it the finality of my decision. The divorce was no longer just an idea. It was in motion, a force that even Olivia couldn't manipulate her way out of. The phone vibrated again, this time a voicemail. I let it play, her voice filling the silence of the office. David, please. You're overreacting. Let's just talk. Whatever you're thinking, whatever you believe, just give me a chance to explain. A pause, a shaky breath. I know you're mad, but you don't have to do this. We can fix this. Fix this? I chuckled under my breath. Olivia was many things, beautiful, charming, cunning, but self-aware was never one of them. She still thought this was about anger, about me throwing a tantrum. She didn't understand that this wasn't an emotional decision. It was a strategic one. She had made her choices. She had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. And now, she would live with the consequences. I reached for my whiskey again, swirling the amber liquid as I looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, Olivia was panicking, realizing that for the first time in her life, she wasn't in control, that she had gambled and lost. The game was over. And I had won.